right, Marianne, go ahead and let some people in. Welcome, everybody. Welcome, everyone. We're just going to take a little bit of time to get some more people in here. We're so excited to see all of you. And if you can, make sure to get that camera on. I'd love to also hear from you in the chat where all of you are from. That would be also great. You got it. All right, so let's we'll keep getting people coming in, but we can kill the music and get started. Hello, everybody. Welcome. I am so excited to have you here. My name is Josh Zimmerman. I am the co-chair of programming and for the CGA and the moderator for today. For all of you who are here, and some of you who may not know this, the Creators Guild of America is a 501c6 nonprofit organization dedicated to protecting and promoting the rights of digital creators. And if you're interested in learning more, you can visit creatorsguildofamerica.org. Today, we have an all-star panel of thought leaders and experts to discuss the very important topic, knowing your worth, protecting your name, image, and likeness. So for all of you, there will be time for Q&A at the end, and we have received a lot of great questions as well when you signed up to come. If you have any additional questions, you can put it in the chat, and then I can call on you at the end if we have time. Before we get started, please note that if you're not muted, please do so now. And if we see that you are unmuted, the host may mute you, and that's because we're getting some background noise. Also, we are all very excited to have all of you here, but please be mindful that the chat or anything other than questions. We want to make sure that our panelists and all of you are able to pay attention and not be distracted. So I am so excited to have all of you here. What we're going to do, we're going to introduce these amazing 6 individuals, and they're going to give you a 20 to 30 second bio on them. So I'd love to throw it over to Courtney Carter. Courtney.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you, Josh, and thank you to everyone who's come. I'm excited to be here with some of my fellow rock stars from all over the space. Just to give you a quick bio on why I'm here and how I can be helpful to you. I'm currently the Chief Revenue Officer of the Seattle Sounders and Seattle Reign FC, which are the MLS and NWSL professional soccer teams in the city of Seattle. That is a recent change, but for the past, it's been here about 4 months. For the past 10 years, I've been in Los Angeles, first as an agent at CAA. I was the first agent in the digital talent packaging and brand partnerships group at CAA and helped build that department. Represented the likes of Liza Koshy, Fusi Tube, kind of that 1.50 generation of YouTubers, Viners. Hi, Connor. And then started my own management company for the last 7.5 years, representing talent that were all over the space, not just digital, sports, culture, entertainment, fashion. And before that, I represented property. So sports properties, Madison Square Garden, Knicks, Rangers, Liberty, Major League Soccer, as well as worked at ESPN. So I have a breadth of experience around name, image, and likeness as it pertains to property and person.
Thank you so much, Courtney. Let's stick on the sports theme and head over to Dave.
Hey everybody, thanks for having me. I'm Dave Sethi. It's great to see some familiar faces and names in the audience today. I'm the Chief Operating Officer at athletes.org. We're building the Players Association for college athletes. I've spent my entire career really at the intersection of sports, digital, social, tech, media, and have worked extensively with creators in the creator economy before those terms were so widely used. I've spent a chunk of my career on the platform side. I was with Google and YouTube for about 6.5 years, many generations ago. And most recently, I was leading sports partnerships at Instagram from 2018 until summer of 2023.
Amazing. Thanks, Dave. Let's head over to Byron. Byron.
All right. I hate talking about myself, but I guess I'll do it. So I run a very small management company called Ebbrell Entertainment. We're small on purpose. We have 18 clients. Connor, who you see, is one of them. And our clients are all very different from one another. And that's by design. Everyone we work with is their own, is very unique to us. But our clients range from an Oscar-winning documentary producer to the one-time most famous American celebrity in China and everything in between. I've been in the space for about a dozen years. I've represented creators in about $100 million of brand deals at this point, which is something that I realized about 6 months ago, and I've been very happy about that number. I do a bit of producing. I've produced 4 feature films, 2 of which have actually been released so far. And I'm the executive producer of a podcast called The Vile Files, which breaks the top 10 pretty much once a month. On the weekends, I work in the food business outside of the entertainment work that I do. I co-founded Chain, which is a really fun food events company in LA, and I am part of a small investment group that was probably a couple things I'm forgetting, but that's a quick high-level overview of me and what I'm up to.
Thanks, Byron. Ben, let's go to you.
Hi, good morning or good evening from London, which is where I'm based in our studio. So one of the co-founders of Sorted Food. Think of us like a global food and cooking and sometimes travel YouTube show that spans across all other social channels as well. But we've been going 14 years on YouTube, well over 1 billion video views, but it's based around 4 of us mainly on screen who have known each other for 27 years. So with regards to this session, name, image and likeness, we've kind of got the 4 of us as individuals, but also Sorted Food as a brand, that all we want to do is have fun as a friendship and a constant dialogue around food across the internet. But there are, of course, a few formalities that have to sit behind it. So perhaps we'll tackle some of those later.
Ben, you sound so proper with that British accent because I don't. So I'm going to throw that. Thank you for the intro. I'm going to throw that over to Connor now.
Less charming accent over here, Connor Franta. I'm a content creator as well. Been on YouTube for 14 years, nearly half my life. I have over 500 million views. Along the way, I've started 2 companies, a lifestyle brand, Common Culture, and then a record label, Herdwell. I've written New York Times bestselling books. I've photographed celebrities such as Olivia Rodrigo and Billie Eilish. So I kind of have used the platform and the catalyst of internet fame to launch myself into a multi-hyphenate of different careers, utilizing my name, image, and likeness to create my entire living.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Connor. And last but not least, Scott Hervey. Scott, take it away.
Hi, I'm Scott Hervey. I am a partner at a law firm here in Los Angeles called Weintraub Tobin. We've been working in the digital media space since version 1.0 with some early content creators before there was even YouTube. I've been an entertainment attorney for a very long time, so I've been dealing with name, voice, and likeness issues primarily from a buyer standpoint. I tend to represent production entities, studios, and so we need to make sure that we get name, voice, and likeness right. So I'm well versed to tell you all the the legal guardrails around name, voice, and likeness today.
Thanks, Scott. Well, listen, if you can't tell, this is a breadth of experts here. one of the things that's really interesting is when you think of NIL and NIL, that really originated in the sports industry, the sports space. And when we were thinking about this topic, we really wanted to expand that to creators as well, because it is really important. So just from our panelists, what is name, image, and likeness, and why is it so important for everyone, especially creators, to know about it? Who wants to jump in on that?
How about I give you like the legal, because
I love
first,
that.
yeah, first you have to have legal rights, and then once you have the legal rights, then you can put the economics behind it, right? So there are legal rights that every individual has in their name, voice, and likeness. Every state, there's no federal right of publicity statute, and that's where your rights in name, voice, and likeness comes from. It comes from a right of publicity statute, and each state has its own, either codified in a statute, right of publicity laws, or it has just common law right of publicity laws. In California, California has it's in a statute, and there's a statutory protection in California of an individual's name, voice, and likeness, and the right to use their name, voice, image, likeness in commercial settings. So that's where the rights come from. And then we can let everybody else talk about the economics that are behind the rights.
Sure. Who's up next? Connor.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to say that in my space, it's your personal brand, it's your individual identity, your name, image, and likeness. And I guess in more of a philosophical sense, it's the only thing in this world that's proprietary to you. It's what makes you an individual. It's sort of something that you can use to empower yourself on the internet of what is your point of view, what is your individuality, and go from there. So that's usually how I use it in my space, it is what makes me me.
Amazing.
And by the way, I would say that any person, be it a public figure or a private figure, their identity is unconditionally valuable.
Mm-hmm.
And there's, this extends to content creators, this extends to any individual. If I were to go tell my friends, hey, this coffee shop down the road is really good, that coffee shop doesn't get, without my permission, the ability to put a photo of me on the wall and say Byron says it's good, even though I'm a private individual. But yeah, I agreeing with what Connor's saying. It's your identity, and it's unconditionally valuable.
And I'll just dovetail off that. Thank you, Scott, for the legal. I think it's important. And then Connor and Byron for explaining that there is value in that, not only like institutional, but there to talk to the like financial value of that, and how you can evaluate if something is right for you or not. There are different levels of the usage of your name, image. I think Scott also said voice, right? And likeness. And, as we just came out of a major strike, a lot of that was a lot of the issues were around that, especially as it pertains to, AI and imagery and deep fakes and things like that. So we can get maybe deeper into it, but there are, if you, for example, get a brand deal or you get something, a lot of those deals will be very grossly blanketed in terms of the usage of your name, image, likeness, or voice, so that you all of a sudden you just see like a random spam ad and you're on it. So I think having the right attorney or person that represents you that knows exactly what they're looking at is super important. And then I too, Byron, we had the opportunity to produce some things, and we actually created a Liza on Demand episode that kind of leaned into this on YouTube Originals, which was, if you remember those apps where you took a photo and all of a sudden your face changed and you were like a geisha, and then you were, a pop star. There was usage in those that all of a sudden your face could show up anywhere. And you just thought it was a cool Instagram or, internet meme thing you were doing, but essentially you were writing away the rights to your face. And we kind of took a funny comedic angle on that in the episode, but the reality is, anytime you take a photo of yourself willingly and you put it somewhere, or you attend an event, there is some sort of clearance. So if you go to a professional sports game, you have given the right to be photographed. And those can be used by the team in advertising. So again,
That's
there's
that fine print on
levels.
the back of the ticket that nobody ever reads.
That part. That's right. And so, there's different levels. And I think that that's also important to differentiate here is, depending on what the ask is. And in that, there's different levels of investment that you should be charging for that. Whitelisting, I think we should bring up whitelisting at some point, everyone. That is something that is also included in deals a lot that I would strike. Because it's just, unless they put money against the value of using what whitelisting is. So anyway, I could keep going into the different levels of usage, but I think it's important to note that it's not just like one blanket thing, that you can differentiate levels of usage and what they can, and how that's valued.
If
Yeah,
I could,
so-
for just 2 seconds too, I just want to talk about kind of the scope of those rights, right? Because, name, voice, likeness. Okay. Does that what about any imitation of my voice? What about a digital replica of my persona? Do we have protection there? And under the California statute, your name, voice, likeness, photograph of you, a imitation of your voice is also protectable or protected against, at least its use in a commercial sense, right? So like there's some famous cases where a sound-alike singer of a very famous singer was used in a Ford ad, and that was found to have violated California's right of publicity. Same thing with a graphic, like when I mean graphic, I don't mean graphic, but I mean like, like a sketch or a drawing, a cartoon-like representation of somebody's image, that as long as that's used in connection with the advertising or sale of a product or service for that commercial purpose, that too would be protected against under California's statutory right of publicity. Also, another thing to point out, even certain dead people have rights of publicity in California and in other states. The right of publicity in California, at least for certain celebrities, if you follow certain requirements, it can last for a period of time after that celebrity's death.
So we don't have any dead people here on the call, so that's a
but
good thing. But
I
it
did
is
see a
good to
number
know.
I did see a number of agents and signing
Yes.
on. So
Exactly. Dave.
Yeah, just to piggyback off of what all the esteemed panelists have shared, this notion or concept of NIL has been around for a very long time. Interestingly enough, I would argue that its context in college athletics has been one of the tips of the spear in bringing this concept into the mainstream. So the most relevant example of its place in college athletics is actually in reference to a policy set in July of 2021 by the NCAA that enabled college athletes to profit off of their name, image, and likeness, much in the same way that creators like Connor have been able to do for a very long time. Yet this policy is still restricting college athletes from being paid for their athletic performance the way that professional athletes are. So, prior to 2021, an athlete who had a social media following on Instagram or YouTube or Facebook could build that community and a hyper engaged audience, but wouldn't be allowed to click that monetize button on their YouTube channel. Interim policy was set summer of 2021. It's sort of like Helen of Troy. It's the cause or issue that has launched 1,000 other issues in college athletics. But for those who aren't aware, a lot of the rights that creators have enjoyed when it's come to monetizing their NIL were inapplicable to college athletes until 3 years ago.
And I'll say, thank you for that, Dave. Like, I was on national leadership of student athletes in 2002, and this was a major issue. And so it took almost 20 years. And it's still not perfect, right? But just to give you guys context as well as to the nuance and how hard it is to change policy, something as large as that.
And that's why we're all here, right? We're all here because we want to enable policy change and protecting all of you, and having you know your rights. Ben, what about you over in the UK?
I think I'd echo as a sort of definition exactly what Connor was saying. I think what I'd add to that is also as a individual or as a brand and a business, it's an investment. So building the value of your NIL is infinite. Think of it as a linear journey. I don't imagine ours was worth much a decade or two ago. It's worth a bit more now. And you hope that if you protect it and look after it and make sure that you don't go wrong with it, it will be worth even more in the future. So you're kind of on that trajectory. So always consider it as an investment. And because of most of what we do now is in the digital space, whilst you might be able to protect period of term of use, it essentially is out there forever and you can't ultimately control it. So whatever you do with brands or with organizations, think about what that could do as an investment sort of angle for the future.
That's a really good, Connor, go ahead.
Well, I was gonna say it's a really good point. I mean, it's almost like again, I don't think people think about it as almost like a credit score, something that can fluctuate or something that has a history to it. But it really is true that the longer you invest in your name, image, and likeness, your brand, your identity, the more valuable it can become. And it fluctuates, depending upon what could take a hit, whether it's your views or some sort of scandal or some sort of story. But it can always ebb and flow back to importance. And I think sometimes creators forget that, it's a long haul journey here. It's an investment in growth. It's not a quick run.
So let me ask this, is that, go ahead, Byron.
No, go for it, Josh.
Is that on this putting a value, right? And when Ben said, starting off, your name and image and likeness may have not been, worth a lot. The question is, how do you put a value on your name, image, and likeness from the very beginning, and how do you protect it?
I'm sorry, Byron, go ahead. And then I think Dave could actually give some good insight because there are like ranking boards of college athlete NIL scores and values. And I think that might be like, maybe he has some insight into how that's all calculated, and Courtney too, possibly. But go ahead, Byron.
So I think there's a lot of different ways that you can actually put like a specific dollar sign. And I think that that's in relation to the specific ask. It's in relation to how long this lasts. And to me, longevity is actually a really, really, really big part of this. I think that a lot of people early on in their career, or early on in their career as a content creator, rush to give away those rights relatively cheaply because it's an opportunity to get dollar signs. I see this a lot now with earlier creators in their careers who are doing oftentimes specific UGC things for brands. Hey, this video, I'm used to getting $2,000 for a video. These guys will give me 10 if they can own it. Or these guys will give me 5 if they can own it. Or, hey, I'm getting $50,000 for 3 videos, but I can get $60,000 if they can own it or if they can use it for 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years. And rushing to give those rights away on the cheap can have consequences. If you make a video for Starbucks earlier in your career, you can never really work for Dunkin' because you can say, hey, I'm not in business with Starbucks anymore, but Starbucks isn't out of business with you. And so I think that right now, UGC is actually an area where people are really quick to give those rights away at a deep, deep discount early in their career. And I think that what's funny is that I think that the more valuable people's NIL becomes, the more precious they oftentimes are with it, and oftentimes the more reluctant to monetize it because of the awareness of that consequence in the end now. The second you end up on a billboard for a brand, likely you're never going to end up on a billboard for their competitor.
Let's, putting this in context of Screen Actors Guild commercial usage, right? When you're a brand and you hire an actor, it doesn't matter if they're a A-level actor or just a regular old day-to-day actor. You pay for each segment of use, each part of use. So if you're paying, you pay for television commercial, you're paying for a period of time, a run period, and you have to pay if you want to run that commercial again. If you're paying for a commercial, you don't have the right to have billboard or print. You have to pay for billboard and print. And by the way, when you sign a contract, like, it has to be known to the actor that that's what they are signing up for. So it's got to be really clear in the contracting and in the payment that it's print, billboard, commercial, and the payments are there for each like level of use and length of use. And so it's important when you're making those deals in this space to keep that in mind, that each type of use and the length of use all has a value or should have a value attributed to it.
Yeah, I'll dovetail off that, Scott. I think it's really important. Whenever I was negotiating contracts for my clients and with their attorneys, it was very, very simple. There's no usage term after, you cannot use their name, image, and likeness after the term. Period, end of story. Now, there are certain cases where we're building a brand with someone. So we launched a sub brand of a beauty company with Liza Koshy, and that was going to be in CVS. And, you know, we had a major national retail distribution of this product. And there's only, because of the third-party pass-through rights to those retailers, there's only so much control we can have on whether CVS keeps up the photo of Liza as affiliated to that product. So there is some nuance to the rights in which you're giving to someone else that have the right to give that to someone else. So there's different also layers to who can. And at that point, there's only so much control you have. But you can also say, hey, there's a period after the term. I usually would never go longer than 60 days. 15 to 60 days was what I would give in those cases where you could clear out shelf space or whatever it may be, if you're dealing with products especially, and name, image, and likeness as it pertains to the distribution of those.
Ben, Connor, Dave?
Yeah, just since Scott made reference to it, at least in the collegiate athletics, even in the pro space, there's any number of media codes that publish valuations. On3 is probably the one that's gotten the most attention over the past couple of years, Open Doors, et cetera. I mean, I think in general, the best data points are actually seeing what someone is willing to pay you for the right to your NIL and the usage of your NIL, because there's so many valuations that are swirling, but ultimately those are real data points of who's willing to write, you know, a check for what. But we're on this call supported by the Creators Guild. It's good to know and use resources that can help you discern value relative to deal structure, as everybody on the panel has referenced, right? So whether it's Byron talking about ownership of content versus licensing, what's the term, you know, for that period? Are you licensing something in perpetuity for what types of use, et cetera? And it can get, I don't want to say complicated, but there can be a level of granularity there where it may help to get some third-party advisement or look to organizations like the Creators Guild to understand what you're selling and, you know, what an organization is asking for. I do think there is a reverse way of looking at this. If I were a creator, and by the way, don't look at my Instagram feed because you'll see how abundantly clear it is that I'm not a creator. But if you want to think about your own costs, not just your hard costs, but costs of time and trade-offs of other things and ways in which you could be profiting off of your NIL instead of the other way around, I think setting your valuation is certainly going to be sort of part science, part art. But if you look at how media companies traditionally operate, they get to a level of precision when it comes to the way they set rates for selling branded content, for sponsored content, et cetera. And part of that calculus is certainly just looking at the costs and then building from there. And so while I'm not suggesting that every creator on this call has the time to act 100% like a media company, principally, there are things that you can be incorporating into your daily practice that'll help you get to a better place of setting your own rates and understanding the decisions that may be, you know, more aligned with your interests and the time you're spending than otherwise.
Yeah, Ben, go ahead, Courtney.
I was going to say, setting rate, Dave, is so important. Your rate is what the market will pay for you. So making sure you value yourself, and to Dave's point, Your time, your hour to you might be worth $100, and to someone else it's worth 1,000. For whatever reason that is. And when you're able to set rate in a specific category, let's say print usage or digital social usage or whitelisting or national broadcast or voice, that's your rate. And you can decide whether you want to come off rate if for whatever reason it's beneficial to you, or your other, interests, whether that's someone's going to put a ton of marketing behind something you're really excited about, right? And like you might value that more than the rate. But I would just say be aggressive with valuing yourself, because a brand or a platform is going to very easily take the lowest common denominator. And yes, it's a bit science and a bit art, and there's impressions, there's numbers, and somebody might take engagement and is more important than subscribers, right? So not one negotiation or conversation is the same. I will tell you, as a representative, I never once sent a rate card out to anybody. I never owned a rate card. I would never put a rate card on my clients. Get me on the phone. I'm going to tell you why this person is important, because also as their rep, I know what the next 12 months looks like. So you're trying to sign up name, image, and likeness of my client for the future, and you don't know what's in the plan. I do. So, that's important. I just want to be very clear. I hate seeing, oh, my rate for a post is this. It's like, no. Like, let's have a conversation first, and then I'll let you know what the rate is. Sorry, I just had to make that clear.
No, it's great. Ben.
I think it's a brilliant point, because I think often when clients, brands are reaching out, they are very much aware of what they want within their marketing strategy and what they need and for how long. But what they're not necessarily considering is how it works on the other side. So the example just given about, Starbucks and then probably not being able to work with other coffee chains. If a brand wants to work with you with your NIL for 3 months, that's fine, but they are probably taking you off the market, and you're not going to get other work in that category with other brands for probably 12 months. So there has to be a bit of give and take there. That's not to say that you can simply quadruple your fee, because that might not be feasible for them and you lose out on work. So it does boil down to the NIL is worth what somebody's prepared to pay, but you do need to think about an exclusivity if you're going to be unable to work with anyone else in automotive or anyone else in accommodation or whatever the category is that you're doing the partnership with.
And I want to thank you. I want to throw a little bit of a wrench in all of this. All of you know me well enough to know that I may do that from time to time. As a former manager, and we have managers on this call, and people who have, and creators and lawyers, and there have been so many brands that have reached out, or organizations that have or companies that want to use a creator's name, image, and likeness for free, right? And they claim that their use of that creator's name, image, and likeness gives that creator much more reach. It's going to get to this many millions of people, and the benefit is wonderful. What would you say to that? And what should creators do when they're offered that as a incentive to give away their name, image, and likeness?
So I would say generally run for the hills. In practice, in theory, anyone saying, let us use your image to make more people know who you are, is like saying play a free concert so people can hear your music. Just because it's your likeness and it doesn't require additional work per se, you don't have to create the content yourself, doesn't make it any different. And whoever is asking this of you is almost certainly taking advantage of you. There are a very, very, very few number of instances, though, in my career where I've had extremely exclusive brands offer highly discounted fees. Never nothing, but highly, highly discounted to work with our clients. And there's been a few instances that I have actually seen where these brands are so valuable to be associated with that working for a discount actually did elevate someone's career. It's gross that a brand would behave like that. But there's been a couple instances where we've been able to put our pride aside, and a couple instances where we've been able to see a way where being aligned with a truly exclusive partner was a brand builder for our clients. Those are very, very, very few instances. And I would argue in those cases, those brands are actually getting a discount by contributing their own name and image and likeness, which is a value to them. Um, 100 out of 100 times, I would say if somebody's asking you to waive your fee or take a deep discount, they're taking advantage of you. But in 1 or 2 out of those 100 times, there might be an opportunity to take mutual advantage.
Dave?
I think to piggyback off what Byron said, excuse me, I feel like I see this kind of it's a different but similarly related model, which is I'm just paying people off of like affiliate commissions, right? And so we're not going to pay you anything up front, but for any sales that you drive, you know, through adding your link in bio or swiping up on IG stories, we'll pay you, you know, X, Y, and Z, which that model I'm certainly not a proponent of. And would certainly recommend folks to think twice about. But to sort of put the shoe on the other foot, if the currency with which an organization wants to pay you as a creator, if that currency is reach, then why not get them to answer the same questions they would be asking you in terms of what they're willing to guarantee in terms of reach, audience, the mechanics and tactics of which they're going to get you in front of potential new audience. You know, are they going to put paid behind that, et cetera? We see this a lot in college athletics because, you know, frankly, the context is still new to college athletes, and thus you're going to get the predatory behaviors that many creators experienced in the early 2010s when, you know, organizations thought the getting was good because these creators didn't know their true value, so to speak. But you can be asking those same questions of these organizations and put their feet to the fire, hold their feet to the fire, rather, when it comes to, well, if you're not going to pay me and you're only going to want to exchange, you know, do some sort of barter deal, then show me what gains, you know, you predict I'm going to get, as opposed to just telling me, well, I've got a, you know, a social account that's 10x yours, so you're inherently going to benefit. I would just put that expectation on them before you enter into any agreement that doesn't involve a monetary transaction.
Ben,
And
Connor,
I would
Scott?
also be concerned if they're like, oh, but we'll give you equity. Or we'll give you, you know, I think those are very complicated deals. And so be wary of those types of offers. And never say yes to something like that without an attorney.
Yeah, I mean, I guess from a different perspective, I completely agree. It's incredibly important to be cautious. I do think there's a bit of a uniqueness in terms of if you're if you're at the beginning of your career and you are a new budding artist who does actually need exposure, there are times in which I understand and I have myself done free work in exchange for the exposure that has thus benefited me. I think it's important to be aware that, like Byron said, they are using you and hopefully you can use them right back. I don't think in terms of once you start establishing a career, that's an intelligent decision to continue to make. But I think if you leverage an opportunity, let's say when I wanted to get more into commercial photography, I realized I didn't have much of a portfolio of commercial work. So when I had an opportunity to do some sort of free photography gig for a magazine, I thought, okay, number one, this will give me experience. Number two, this will actually put me in a magazine and give me credibility. And number three, I'm going to make connections on set that day with people that I can thus hopefully do the good job I know I can do and get paid work from it. And that did occur not only from the confidence in myself, but also like the true work ethic I knew I was going to put into it. But would I continue to do that over and over and over again? No, that's, you know, a form of self-harm I would never tell anyone to continue to do, because at the end of the day, exposure does not pay the bills.
Ben?
No, to echo that, I think Connor's got that spot on, that if you are going into something on more of a quid pro quo basis, and we've done it both with NIL in mind, but also actual content creation for a platform that has got a large audience, and we have seen great opportunities come off the back of that we can literally join back the dots, often several years, and go, turned out in hindsight, that was worth doing for free. But you cannot rely on hindsight. And therefore, to Connor's point, you have to go in with this really bullish attitude that if you are doing this for free, you are going in and proactively making connections and proactively using and abusing the time they're giving you in that space to get your foot in the door and make connections, because they're not paying you. So therefore you double down and work twice as hard to forge your own relationships to take forward. And I counter that with some of the work, some of the partners we still work with this year started as a result of some freebies that we did 8 years ago. And they're one of our, you know, biggest, best, I'm not even going to say clients, partners, but they're a partner. So good things can come of freebies, but you need to walk into it knowing exactly what you're doing. And I would say still find a way of protecting it, even though there's not any money changing hands, there should still be contracts.
Scott, but speaking of contracts, Courtney and then Scott.
I was just say, trust your gut.
Trust your gut. Scott, let's from a lawyer's hat.
Yeah, I mean, just be wary, right? Like, I think, as the panel said, anybody who's asking you to do something for free have an ulterior motive, and that motive is to leverage you to their financial benefit. If they're not willing to put some degree of skin in the game, either that is a guarantee on like affiliate commissions or a guarantee on reach, then they're not really committed to a like reciprocal benefit, a relationship that provides reciprocal benefits. So,
Well, we are blasting through time, and I wish it was longer, but all of your time is so valuable. I want to ask each of you, what's one thing that you want everybody to know about name, image, and likeness, or this topic that we have not discussed?
why don't you call on us, Josh?
All right, let's go with Scott first.
Oh, geez. Okay. So a couple of things. One is that you do have rights in the event that your name, voice, likeness is being used without your permission or is being used outside of the scope that you've agreed to. You have contractual rights if you've entered into an agreement with a brand or a manufacturer of a product to use your name, voice, and likeness, your rights of publicity in connection with, you know, whatever commercial advertisements for the brand or on products or goods or services. So you do have rights. And by the way, like this happens more frequently than you would expect. Two is that when you are doing deals, you may think that brands, even like kind of well-known brands, are sophisticated and know what they're doing, and we've found that they might not be, and they might not really know what they want, or they might be asking for one thing and think it's something else. So clarity in contracting is super important because that sets the expectations, and it also like defines exactly what the rights are. So I mean, that's why it's really important, I think, to have good representation on both sides so that everybody is aware of what usage is allowed, what usage is not allowed, and exactly what rights the brand has and does not have, whether that's a brand deal, whether that is sponsorship and endorsement for a product, whether that's somebody's image or likeness in a video game. Regardless of what it is, clarity in contracting is really, really, really important. I guess
Thanks,
that's
Scott.
It's it off to everybody.
That's perfect. Dave.
Yeah, to Scott's point, I think the more upfront work you do, the less grief you'll experience on the back end of these deals. And, you know, frankly, setting those expectations up front can be the difference between a one-off deal that begins and ends, and then that's the extent of the relationship or really a transaction, versus forging a longer-term relationship and partnership with organizations who want to come to you. And that's how I personally view every deal that I would engage in. Is this is a springboard, ideally, into us doing more business together and having a more fruitful relationship. It's in many ways, and this also touches on a bit of what Scott said, and it's a little ironic, but these huge organizations that are coming to you, maybe looking to you for all things cutting edge when it comes to the platforms, digital, social, etc. So I would say it just behooves you to stay appraised of, you know, the industry trades, staying connected to resources like Josh and other panelists on the Creators Guild, obviously, because again, as strange as it sounds, you are the ones charting the course, not the other way around. And then my shameless plug, I guess, since I am currently supporting college athletes, is try to collaborate with college athletes and other creators who are outside of the vertical that you may that might be your tried and true vertical. Some of them have hyper engaged local or regional communities that could be really valuable to all of you. And again, speaking from the college athlete perspective, they actually have at times multiples the engagement that the average creator is getting. And so finding creative ways to tap into communities and vice versa, I think could be really valuable. But those are just a few things.
Thanks, Dave. Ben, you should get together with some athletes and do a cooking run.
So many good tie-ups.
Yeah, go for it. Throwing it to you.
A couple of T words. So trust. So basically the reason that generally a brand or a client would want to work with your NIL is because general public have trust in that. So you basically need to maintain that trust above and beyond everything. That said, trust in a partnership with a brand should always feel most natural. I mean, we often find that we turn down more potential partnerships because it just doesn't feel right. It doesn't feel like there's a trust there. It's too one-sided. The negotiations would have to be so forceful that it's almost like you're starting from the wrong place. So if a brand wants your trust and your NIL, then they really should be trusting in a sort of two-way partnership and making sure that the contracts and the legals are kind of fair both ways. And that leads me on to the second T, which is termination. And we've seen lots of times where brands are very heavy-handed on making sure that they can cut the content creator loose as soon as they bring the brand into disrepute. And that does happen, of course it does, but actually nowadays we're seeing it just as much the other way around, where brands are falling out of public favor, sometimes very, very steeply. And again, there needs to be the option to go both ways. So for me, it's that trust in a partnership to make sure that your NIL is protected. But if they're not going to trust that you're going to help them as much as they're willing to help you, then it's probably not going to work.
Thanks, Ben. Connor?
So many thoughts, so many feelings.
Oh, don't freeze on me now, Connor.
Oh, can you hear me?
Oh, now we can. You're back.
You're back.
Oh God, everyone is HD, so that's shocking. Okay, I said so many thoughts, so many feelings. The importance, I guess, from a creator perspective is to have good representation. You know, a lawyer, a manager, an agent, all these things are invaluable. They really do the work that I can't do myself. So setting up these contracts and looking at the legality of your name, image, and likeness is so important. It's something that's far beyond my pay grade. And number two, again, I think it's remembering what we're really talking about here. Your name, image, and likeness is proprietary. It is your individual thumbprint on this earth, and holding that value and that power in what you create and what you put out into the world. And some of the more like intangible items of name, image, and likeness, or a career that I think Byron and I talk about all the time is, for me, it's longevity, it's legacy, it's reputation, it's these intangible items that you should be thinking about putting into your work every day that does add value. It's a little bit, again, of unquantifiable value, but I know for the brands that do work with me, they know that they're getting a career built on honesty and earnesty, and there's nothing that they're going to like uncover about me, and that is invaluable.
Thank you, Connor. Byron, and then Courtney.
Just before getting into my thought here, I just want to add on to one thing that Scott said about how these brands that seem like they might be sophisticated with NIL might not be as sophisticated as you think. I pay attention to what brands are doing with your image. I can think of probably 3 times this year that we had a deal for a client with a brand, in all 3 cases, a pretty large brand, where there was a certain number of days they were allowed to use the content afterwards, 60 days, 30 days, 90 days, etc. And we've had to call them on day 115 and say, guys, why is this still showing up in my Instagram feed? In general, I never assume malicious intent. I think that oftentimes these big companies just aren't paying attention, and they think, oh, we got the rights to this, so let's just use it. And so you should be vigilant about that. And we've had to be that a few times recently. But if I were to leave you guys with one thought that we haven't really discussed, it's the idea that NIL monetization is in some ways your compensation for what's already been done. When you make a video for a brand, you're getting paid a certain amount of money to actually create the video, and then a certain amount of money for the credibility that your name, image, and likeness brings to them. You're getting paid for that credibility you've already built. On the looking at it from a different direction, if you were to let a brand just use your existing images, you're more directly just monetizing what's already been done. So the NIL portion and the NIL monetization is monetizing the work that's already been done. And I bring that back to what I just said earlier in this panel, which is that people are very quick to assume that just because it's not more work doesn't necessarily mean it shouldn't be more money. And I think that that's a mistake that a lot of people make really quickly and one to avoid. Just because it's an extra $1,000 and it takes no more time to grant the usage doesn't mean that that usage isn't worth more than $1,000.
Thanks, Byron. Courtney, you're muted, so there you go.
Thank you, just everyone. I'm learning, and it's nice to kind of be in this conversation. Again, I'm gonna just say something very simple, which is trust that you know your audience best. I think a lot of these people come to you and say, well, this is what it is, but you know your audience, so if it doesn't feel right, it's probably not right, unless it's a ridiculous financial gain and it's not going to hurt you. I would say that get on the phone and speak to a person as soon as you possibly can in any instance that includes your name, image, and likeness that seems a little frustrating. There's a ton of agencies out there that are just in the numbers game, and they've been given a job and they've got to put a certain amount of impressions against a campaign. And it's, you know, I think another word for education is most favored nations, MFN, comes up a lot. So if you hear MFN, that means there's telling you that everyone gets the same rate for something. Usually it's not true. In some cases it is, again, to Byron's point, assume positive intent. But keep that in mind. And then I would also just say, like, I think early days, especially when we're talking about not just your image, but the content you're putting out and it being ripped and put other places. This is like early internet days. We did this with Collab, was a company that said, hey, we can go like monetize your stuff at other places, especially with Viners. Is that there is only so much you can do. And so don't worry about chasing if people are ripping your content and putting it other places for their gain, means whatever it may be, unless they're commercializing it. If you're able to figure out a way, if someone's using your content and commercializing it, then you have a right against that. But otherwise, maybe it's not bad to have your content syndicated for free, as we've talked about before. You know, not all eyeballs are bad eyeballs. You can even prove your impressions out a little bit in that way. So I would just say to that, and then in terms of contract and getting paid, two things that also weren't brought up were pay or play and kill fees. If you get into deals, just say, hey, this is a pay or play deal, meaning if you decide to pull out at whatever point and I didn't, it wasn't my fault, you still owe me all the money, even if I have not fulfilled the contract. And some people call that, some people also negotiate kill fees. Again, creative changes, they churn directions, they don't want to do it anymore. There is a pre-negotiated kill fee in there. So you aren't kind of just out on the street and not get paid.
Thank you. And usually you want to have a lawyer that is, or some kind of legal representation to be able to have those kind of discussions, or representation that knows the law. Is that correct, Scott?
Well, I think lawyers, managers that have experience in this space, agents that have experience in this space and know what they're looking for, depending upon the size of the deal, the complexity of the deal, right? I mean, you pick you have the right person or right team for what it is you're doing. You might just have your agent or your manager for a, small to medium sized brand deal, but you're definitely going to bring your agent, your manager, and your lawyer on board for a year-long sponsorship and endorsement deal, where you're getting, 6 figures, 7 figures. So,
well, listen, we have 5 minutes left, so we have some questions that have been submitted, but also in the chat. Somebody asked, Can you share insights on creative control? I'm a comedian and I'm curious what the benefits are for filming a comedy special on my own versus hiring a production company and doing a standard 50-50 split. The production company offers quote unquote distribution, but the market is quite saturated. Who wants to take that one? Don't all jump at once. Let's go with Courtney.
I've been in these conversations, a great question. I don't think that there's one answer to this. I think it depends on a lot of variables, including if you feel like you can self-distribute, and that in self-distribution, you'll be able to make money, and how expensive shooting the special is gonna be. And who the production company thinks that they can distribute. They have their own network and those pipes are wide and long. You know, those things are valuable, especially if the rev share on that, you know, depending on how they're selling it or distributing it or monetizing against it. Again, I think the days of making sure your comedy specials on Comedy Central, or God, that's showing my age. You know, Scott, Netflix, or you know, one of the streamers. I think those are few and far between. And I need you to know that those deals, you own nothing. They own everything. Netflix owns you when you go in there. So, and I don't know if Scott can speak to that as someone who represents platforms and production companies, but everything's super nuanced. So I'm sorry, without more context, I can't really give you a clear direction. I would just say that like, there's multiple directions you can go. And if you have a huge audience, sometimes monetizing it and self-producing it is the best way if you're looking for just to get some jokes out there and get some exposure.
Creative control, or creative control ebbs and flows with the amount of money that's being spent in connection with the production of the asset, right? So if it's a a brand deal on somebody's social platforms, most likely the influencer is going to retain control over the content as long as it adheres to the brand guidelines and the project guidelines that were given to the influencer. If this is a a kind of longer term endorsement deal with multiple deliverables and a wide variety of aspects of the deal, there's going to be maybe a mutuality of creative control. Maybe it will edge more to the brand side of things. I mean, definitely if a brand is going to pay a lot of money for something, there's going to be a lot more brand involvement in what the deliverables look like. And, also the use of creator assets for, agreed upon kind of brand usage, whether that be in print, whether that be in email, brand social, brand website, etc. But usually there's a degree of approval, right? Photo approval, etc. So again, it'll ebb and flow depending upon the type of deal, the amount of money you're getting, the brand's needs, your leverage, etc.
Thanks, Scott. So everyone in the chat, if you could just throw in there, if you found this helpful and if you learned something, throw it in the chat so everyone can see. Listen, if you're interested in learning more about the Creators Guild of America, you can visit creatorsguildofamerica.org. Be sure to follow us on socials and sign up for our newsletter to stay informed about upcoming events and panels. Very quickly, since we are out of time, where Scott and Ben and Byron and Connor and Dave and Courtney, where can people find you? And let's just start with Scott.
Okay. People can find my podcast, The Briefing by the IP Law Blog, where you get your favorite podcast from. It's a short bite of between 7 to 15 minutes on issues related to media, issues related to intellectual property, issues related to the creator economy. You can find me. You can find me there. You can find me on my firm's website, and you can reach out if you have a deal that you need representation in.
Thanks, Scott. Ben.
Nice and simple for us, Sorted Food, on pretty much every social platform. Come chat to us there.
Thanks, Ben. Byron?
I'll plug my email into the chat.
Awesome. Connor?
At Connor Franta across all platforms.
Dave?
First name, last name on Instagram, and then LinkedIn. I'll drop the link as well. So yeah, feel free to give me a follow or connect on LinkedIn. Happy to chat with anybody after this panel.
Amazing. Courtney?
Echo Dave, at Courtney Carter on Instagram, not as active on the other platforms outside of LinkedIn. So those two, and give the Sounders in the Rain FC a follow.
There you go. Listen, thank you so much to everyone. Thank you for everyone who has joined. If you found this useful, please share some love to the CGA and to all of these panelists for taking an hour out of their very busy days and your hour out of your busy days. If you did take any screenshots, name, image, and likeness, make sure to credit and tag the people in it, just in case. We can't wait to see you at another event. We're always looking for ideas. Again, thank you, everybody, and we will see you at the next event.
Thanks,
Take care,
Josh.
everybody.
Bye.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you
you.
so
Yeah.
much.
Have a good day.
Take care.